Have you ever heard that phrase, there's plenty of fish in the sea? Apparently there's plenty of fish in the ground too. What is up, guys? Welcome to my review of the newest film, Lisa Frankenstein. And after the abysmal month that was January 2024, it's nice to be able to finally talk about some fresh new releases that aren't January horror films. So Lisa Frankenstein is the newest film that is written by Diablo Cody, who is a pretty acclaimed writer and producer, most notably for Juno, which I believe won an Academy Award, and Jennifer's Body, which is pretty much a cult classic among the horror chicks out there. And directing duties on this one goes actually to Robin Williams' daughter, Zelda Williams. She's an actress. I didn't even realize that she was a director. This is her third film, I believe. First time I've seen any of her work. And as far as Diablo Cody, this is the third film that I've seen that she has written. And one of those three is not Juno. Don't shoot me. And essentially this movie is telling the story of this girl who had a tragedy where she's an orphan and she's very much the outcast in school. She doesn't have many friends. She kind of has this idea of romance, but she also has a bit of a weird, unhealthy obsession with death. And so she has this infatuation with this headstone in this graveyard that she goes to hang out for a little bit of peace and tranquility every once in a while. One night, lightning strikes this headstone that she is so infatuated with, and the dead body inside of it, this young man, comes to life, and slowly they start to build this very sinister romance. Starting off with the positives for Lisa Frankenstein, I actually think this was really a well-directed movie. I think Zelda Williams did a good job at implementing the style that she wanted to implement here, with collaborating with the set design, the costume design, and the art direction. You have a very dark, bleak, very Tim Burton-esque tone going throughout this, while also having a very poppy 80s influence, like neon flavor to it. A lot of purples and blues and greens here. And it's a cool contrast to watch throughout the movie. It starts off with this very black and white, almost cartoonish intro. And then very quickly when you get into the movie, it holds on to those dark tones while also having these moments of brightness and these visuals that kind of give this very twisted sense of hope. And so very much like Tim Burton's movies, which admittedly I'm not the biggest fan of, you put this movie on mute and it's just cool to look at. It's just kind of a visual feast for the eyes. And I think there was a nice balance here with some of the influences and the tone that they're going for too, because as I've already said, I'm not a big fan with Tim Burton stuff. It tends to get a little too weird for me. This one never gets to that point where they're starting to get a little too quirky for my taste. And the fact that they are very heavily influenced by the 80s aesthetic, this does take place, I believe, in 1989, but they have the self-control to not just go balls out 80s references all over the place. That was a nice breath of fresh air for me, because as much as I love that era, and we all love that era, it's the coolest era to kind of go back and do period piece movies in. But sometimes it's a little bit too surface level. It's just 80s soundtrack, the same 6-7 songs we've heard 1,000 times, a whole bunch of hairspray and glitter. And this one has a really unique take on the 80s era that I thought was refreshing. All the performances in the movie are really fun. You've got Katherine Newton playing our lead character and Cole Sprouse playing the reanimated pseudo-boyfriend here, and both of them have very different tasks ahead of them. Katherine Newton has to be a character that gets your sympathy and kind of gets you on her side while also having very direct darkness and kind of a fucked up moral compass because of the things that have happened to her. I mean, if this role was given to somebody 40 years ago, it would have been Winona Ryder, 100%. It's one of those characters. And I think that she does a good job at kind of harnessing that type of character that we've seen a number of times in these types of movies, while also bringing her own spin to it. And I've enjoyed seeing what she's done lately. She was pretty good in Quantumania, for all the faults of that movie. I thought she was really enjoyable in Freaky, the movie with Vince Vaughn. And here she continues to show that she's got a lot of charisma and can do a lot of interesting things. There's even like a musical number halfway through the movie that I don't know if she was actually singing or not, but I was convinced. So for somebody who never really hung out with or has any reason to identify with the very angry teen angst gothic chick, I liked her character. And Cole Sprouse was really interesting to watch too, because his role is, for the most part, dialogue free. He just has to emote with his physical performance through physical comedy and grunts and facial expressions and hand movements. And there's never a point in the movie where you don't understand what his creature is trying to get across to Catherine Newton's character. And so it was interesting to watch such a grotesque monster, quite literally, start to kind of evolve, or I guess devolve, back into what he was before he went into the ground. And you kind of see, as the romance of these two characters buds, as Catherine Newton's character gets more and more corrupted and gets more and more dark throughout the film, you see the lightness start to kind of come back into Cole Sprouse's character, and he starts to look more human and starts to regain more of his humanity. It was an interesting thing they were doing with those two characters, and the way that they were like a mirror image of each other in a certain way. And even Carla Gugino has a small role in the movie that I thought was fun. For the amount that she was here, she was probably the most entertainment that I got as far as comedy in the film. Carla Gugino, somebody I've been a fan of my entire life, ever since Son-in-Law in the 90s, and I would say Fowl of House of Usher, which was her most recent role, was her best work yet, so I'm salivating for more Carla Gugino, and she was fun here. You get some of the best laughs in the movie, in my opinion, were just subtle things about being just a really classic, stereotypical, shitty 80s parent, where she completely just ignores the needs of one child so that she can get like a free Orange Crush soda, and little quirky things like that, that to me brought some of the most entertainment value. And finally, I really liked the score and the soundtrack here. I think that it was a really neat orchestral type score that kind of brings out the darkness in the moments where things that are sinister are going to be happening, while also maintaining the fun tone of the movie. And again, with kind of going along with what I said of not being overindulgent in the 80s era, I think that the song choices that they used here was actually kind of refreshing. It wasn't just the same shit that we hear every time a movie takes place in the 80s. So music can very much complement what you're going for, and in a movie that's so stylistic like this one, very important piece of the puzzle, and I think they did a good job with that. Moving on to the negatives, I gotta be honest, for as much as I'm gonna praise the direction and the set design and the visuals and all of that, I didn't find the movie to be as sharply written as I would have hoped, especially with a script from somebody that is such a name like Diablo Cody. Now, don't get me wrong, I have not experienced all of her work, obviously, so maybe this is just her style and I just don't operate on that wavelength, but for me, this movie had plenty of setups for some very sharp, very witty situations, and while I got some of that with the Carla Gugino character, the rest of the movie I felt like just was a bit of a missed opportunity for some really good laughs and some really like almost darkly comedic moments. And so the dialogue between the characters as well as the situations just didn't pop as much as the visual style of the movie did.
You can talk to my lawyer.
Really hope this goth phase ends soon.
I also found the overall message, or whatever theme they were trying to hammer home with the romance of these two characters, to be a little bit muddied. You don't ever really get to find out anything about who Cole Sprouse's character was before he died and went into the ground that would make any kind of a character arc for him, aside from just relearning how to be a human, which again, very impressive physical performance, but narratively, I wasn't sure what exactly they were going for there. And as well as Catherine Newton's character, somebody that has this very tragic event in her life that makes you sympathize with her, but then suddenly starts to do a lot of very dark, sinister, and evil things. And by the end of it, I still don't really know exactly what lesson she was supposed to be learning or what ultimate conclusion she came to by the final reel of the film. It was fun to watch these two characters together and how their journeys very much are mirror images of each other, but what's the overall point? I struggled to figure that out. And my final negative just deals with my own personal movie taste. This is not my type of movie. I enjoyed it overall, so it is a movie that I had more fun with than I was turned off by, but it's not a film that I could see myself buying or rewatching or recommending to people that are very close to my movie taste. But I could see immediately while watching this the type of people that are going to just go nuts for this. This is destined to be a cult classic, I will promise you that. People that love films like a lot of Tim Burton movies, specifically Edward Scissorhands, or even movies from the 80s that deal more with like that angsty teen rage and black humor with Heathers. those two movies very heavily influenced in this, and this is going to be this generation's version of those. So if you like those type of flicks, this is right up your alley. Overall, guys, this was a fun movie. I like the style of it. I like the visuals. Zelda Williams, much more than Diablo Cody in this situation, is going to have my attention going forward. I'm very curious of what they're going to do in the future. And if the style of movie that I was trying to present here, or if you're a fan of things like Edward Scissorhand and Heathers like I named, this is something you definitely want to check out in the theaters, and you'll probably have a good time with it. But if you're not really somebody who vibes with Tim Burton style movies, or teen angst, this is probably not going to win you over. Well, that's it for this one, guys. If you enjoyed that, click over here for all of my 2024 new release reviews so far. I'm also going to put a playlist up here of all the panels that me and some friends did last weekend at MegaCon in Orlando, Florida. We talk about how to grow as a YouTuber. We talk about horror movies, comic book movies, do a hot take showdown, and I even interviewed the reality star Joey Sasso. So please check out all of that. Like, share, hit the subscribe button if you have not already. And as always, remember, opinions are like assholes, but that doesn't mean you have to be.